नमस्कार सर, स्वागत है सर। शुरू करें क्या?
नमस्ते, यस।
अस्तु। कृष्णम वंदे जगतगुरुम। आज के द्वितीय दिन श्री लाल बहादुर शास्त्री राष्ट्रीय संस्कृत विश्वविद्यालय के इस आभासीय पटल पर आप सभी का हार्दिक स्वागत, अभिनंदन और वंदन। हम बहुत ही सौभाग्यशाली हैं। निरंतर श्री लाल बहादुर शास्त्री राष्ट्रीय संस्कृत विश्वविद्यालय के मालवीय मिशन टीचर ट्रेनिंग सेंटर के माध्यम से निरंतर अपने ज्ञान की अभिवृद्धि, ज्ञान का परिपोषण कर रहे हैं। इसी क्रम में पुनः एक बार हमारे केंद्र के द्वारा इस कार्यक्रम में हम सबका मार्गदर्शन करने के लिए संप्राप्त हैं प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर टीपी शशि कुमार महोदय। मैं सर का इस हार्दिक स्वागत, अभिनंदन और वंदन करता हूं। सर, बहुत बहुत आपका स्वागत। आप बंगाल से हम सबका मार्गदर्शन प्राप्त कराने के लिए समुपस्थित हैं। आप देश के विभिन्न कोणों पर प्रत्यक्ष रूप से शिक्षा जगत को अभिमंडित करने में अपनी महनीय भूमिका का निर्वहन करते हैं। आपने अनेकानेक ग्रंथों का, लेखों का प्रसरण कर समाजस्थ लोगों का मार्गदर्शन किया है। इसी प्रक्रम में आज आप हमारे श्री लाल बहादुर शास्त्री राष्ट्रीय संस्कृत विश्वविद्यालय के आभासीय पटल पर समुपस्थित होकर हम सबका मार्गदर्शन करने के लिए समुपस्थित हैं। मैं पुनः सर का अपने विश्वविद्यालय के पक्ष से, अपने केंद्र के पक्ष से और अपने केंद्र की प्रमुखा प्रोफेसर अमिता पांडे भारद्वाज मैम के पक्ष से सर आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत, अभिनंदन और वंदन करता हूं। और इस अवसर पर मैं अधिक विघ्नभूत न होते हुए सर से निवेदन करता हूं कि सभी हमारे प्रतिभागियों का मार्गदर्शन कर, इनके ज्ञान का अभिमंडन कर हम सबको कृतार्थ करेंगे। डॉक्टर टीपी शशि कुमार।
नमस्ते सर।
नमस्ते,
बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आपका।
नमस्ते प्रोफेसर अमिता पांडे। थैंक यू डॉक्टर प्रमेश, and I'm glad that I'm again back to your institute for addressing a prime topic on a very beautiful program on philosophy and psychology. Professor Amitaji, you want to tell something?
No sir, you can continue.
Okay. A topic which is very close to my heart. What I did for last few years during the COVID is writing few books on the adolescence problem, a book which is a mindset mastery with co-authored from Azerbaijan, and how life can be with harmony in heart. And what is that as a teachers? I understand this is a teachers program, and how in the fast moving world, I call this world as 3-2-1 world, third decade of 21st century, and how nourishing the joyful journey of a child from age 3 to grade 3, the early childhood education, what changes we require to do, and what is that we can do on mental health. How do we take care of the conflict, and how does it impact the harmony of life around us? These are all the thoughts which I had, and continuously addressing this in the context of Indian knowledge system. This is the book which, like a discussion between me and my student, the Gita way. what are the solutions for our problems? I'm sure people in the world talk about SDG, Sanatana Dharma goal, which I call, but people call it as Sustainable Development Goals. So, what are the solutions what India as a country can give? So, why I introduced my books? Because the topic, the Indian knowledge system, what it can give to the mind control and mind management is very close to my, and I love to dwell upon, think about, or let us together think about what and how and what level we have to go. I am sure tomorrow also I have got a session from 11:30 which will talk about the philosophical, psychological aspect in a tandem mode. What is mind? What is mind is a big question. If I know what is mind, we can think about whether we can manage it or not. Manage is not that simple because understanding mind itself is not that simple. We don't know what is it, and the definition of mind itself is little complicated because when we talk about mind, we talk about the self, we talk about our life, we talk about how the relationship between the buddhi, the intellect, and the feelings, the manas, how the colloquium, the discussions happens between them. There is an emotional mind which animals have, which all the beings have, the trees have, the leaves have, the flowers have. It's essential for us to understand as a human, the emotional being. How are we going to look at what is that intellectual mind which makes a conflict between the buddhi and the manas? What are the philosophical, spiritual, knowledge based stuff which we have to think about or which we have to discuss? There are a lot of scriptures, probably starting from Veda to Bhagavad Gita, which describes the philosophical aspect because Vishnu himself is the man of Sudarshanam. Sudarshanam means, Darshanam is philosophy. Sudarshanam means the good philosophy. So I'm sure there are a lot of philosophical answers given to this. There are a lot of strategies on psychological aspects. Therefore, the title of the topic, the philosophy and the psychology of mind management, which involves a strategy of the ultimate aim is to find the techniques for making us happy. How do we make sure that the mind is managed through the philosophical aspect in the perspective of controlling? So let us see what is that management. What is the framework of understanding the nature of the mind? And there is a inner, deeper consciousness, Atma, which people talk about. The other day, the Noida, the radio Mirchi gave an interview on consciousness, which I posted on my YouTube. What are the human behaviors? How do we able to manage this? And tomorrow we are going to talk about the dualism, the distinct between the physical and the influence of the physical structure of all of us, the body pattern, how it is going to relate between the mind and the body, and such things probably tomorrow we can discuss. there are two basic principles. One could be the brain, the physical process which happens in that is why people call it as mind. The English word mind itself is a little confusing. The brain is a physical entity, but the process what happens is the thought, which is not a physical entity. It is not a biological base, is not there for that. It's a function. I keep saying it's like a software in a computer where the brain could be the memory which it has, and the input output devices which is processed by the software can be the manas. So if you look at this, we understand the physical interventions have got very less contribution in the controlling of the mind. Would it be that no, I must think about how I am going to control the mind? In one of my the poem which I wrote in my book called the Rhythm of Life. Rhythm of Life, I wrote long back, I wish I don't wish. I wish I don't wish. Because we start from the school days that what you want to be. What is your wish? What you want to be in your life is a big question people ask. So we fill our mind with a lot of wishes. And with all the wish, you go to a temple, the pujari does puja, and the pujari do the arpan, and then he chants Vairagya Siddhartham Samarpayami. The Samarpanam, the devotion, is with Vairagya Siddhartham, thinking that I don't want anything. If you look at the ultimate teaching of Buddhism, another poetry in the same book, which talks about nirvana. I don't want anything. This book is available on internet. Probably you could look at it. How do I make my mind so clean? Like as Shankara says, Manam Darpana Samanam. Mind is like a mirror. I don't keep anything. Mirror doesn't have anything fixed. It keeps looking at what is in front of you and reflects. So in our life, how do we get into such a situation where the reflection happens? My personal growth is a reflection. The pursuit of meaning for life becomes a reflection. What is existing around me is what influences me. But will I be able to see that it doesn't make an imprint on me, which I carry like a luggage throughout my life? Will I be able to make it like a clean mirror only I reflect? If I can get into that sort of a thought process, then my mind becomes clean. There is nothing to manage. There is no burden. There is no junk. There is no garbage. But what happens is the relevance of the psychological concepts. When you think about the scientific discipline as psychology, the practical techniques under use, whereas you have got a cognitive psychology, the problem solving technologies, the behavioral psychology, the humanistic psychology, neuropsychology. You look at all the different aspects in which the psychology talks about. Or maybe when you come to philosophy, it looks exactly conflicting and contradicting. We talk about the manas, which doesn't have any connection to the physical world, which doesn't have anything to do with my physique as a body. It talks about the Atman, the soul, the nirvana. And it talks about, if you wanted to talk about the importance of sattva, raja, tama concept, sattva, raja, tamo gunas, the purity and the passion and the inertia which we have, probably the three gunas which we have. That is the philosophical aspect. So where is the clarity of mind which balances between these philosophy and psychology? So probably the more you learn, the more you get complicated, unless you find it very distinctly like a question answer in which the chit, the chit is the manas, the atman, the consciousness, and the super intellectual concept of that in the mental state, probably, which can be called as ahankara, ahanda. And how do I get into a atma vichara, the self inquiry, which probably could be the mind management? That is what our Vedic concepts talked about. If you come to the Buddhism, the anika, the asthira, not sthiram, not permanent, which is always in move. Therefore, it creates a lot of changes. I happen to be from the Department of Space. I was with ISRO for 20 years. In Sanskritam, gham means akash. If you prefix that with su, it becomes sukham. And if you prefix with du, it becomes dukham. We are all influenced by the people around you. Now on the screen, I am only seeing some names and some pictures. The lecture would have been recorded and sent it to people. There are 100 people. But as far as I am concerned, there is nobody on my screen. I am talking to a camera. So how do I understand what is the emotional feeling which you have? Whether you are really there or only for attendance, people come here and then lock the screen and then go and do whatever you want. I, like a buffoon, keep talking on this. See, understanding this concept of reflection, the mood, the change, what happens in your facial expression is what creates a spirit and enthusiasm for a speaker. It's like a dancer is asked to dance in front of a camera. Probably I can do that because I'm doing it for last so many years. But what happens is, I don't understand the reflections and the mood, whether you understood it or not. It's like talking to a murti or a tree or a animal who doesn't understand anything. Gadda se baat kar raha hu main. Not for human being. The human being is being human. Being human is a great activity of the psychological, philosophical, intellectual, emotional expressions which they show. If that expression is not there, we become an animal being. Education doesn't happen. Education doesn't happen with animals. Ahara nidra bhaya maithunani samani chaitani dranam pashunam jnanam naranam adhiko vishesho jnanebihina pashubhi samana. Aharam, the food, nidra, sleep, bhayam, the fear and the worry, maithunam, the sex, is equal to for human being and animals. Jnanam naranam adhiko vishesho. Jnanam is extra for human being. Jnane bihina. If you don't have knowledge, you are like an animal. So the conflict is always between not the external world to the internal me. The conflict is between my perception of the world under my intellect and my wish, feelings, emotions, what I have within me. So there is a great conflict between what my mind wants and what my feelings are demanding from me. So if I can understand that conflict, if I can talk to me the internal feelings of conflict and then understand how does it matter, what is that is happening to me. If my life is between the buddhi and the manas, this is my another book called Life Made Simple. Most of these books are written in Delhi only while I was working with the PM's office. The manas and the buddhi, the manas says what, the buddhi says what I do is not correct. My manas says I want this, I wish this, and the buddhi says no, it's not correct, logically it is not correct. So there is a big conflict. And that conflict is what creates dukkham in me, my sadness. So that sadness I can only come out when I internally cleanse myself. That is why Buddhism talks about vipassana, the avabodha dhyanam, or the swadhyayam, avabodhanandhyanam, that adhyanam, that learning. How do I make myself to realize there is nothing which comes from externally, it is all internally. So if I can get into my life internally to understand what governs my life is within me, what I think is what I am. The same concept you can see in Ramayana. Purne manasi sampurnam jagat sarvam sudhadravaihi upana gudapadasya nanu charmas trudaiva bhuvo. The whole world is as I see the world is. The Jainism, the concept of karma, the concept of ahimsa, the concept of samadhi which we have in the Ashtanga Yoga, all these in the practical sense probably would have come in the wellness. Tomorrow we talk about the wellness, which is coming through the treatment mechanism called the Ayurveda, because it's a life, integral part of life maintenance mechanism. I happens to be from Kerala, from an Ayurvedic family related very close to Ayurvedic lifestyle. I don't use the word treatment because it's not treatment. And having coming from the Himalayan tradition of yoga, the Himalayan yoga master Mahamandaleshwar Swami Vedabharati under Swami Rama, the role of not the physical asanas, but the breathing techniques in which pranayama, yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, in which if I have to reach samadhi, I must make my silence. So my masters are called silence, master of silence. And if you look at meditation, DrTPS on internet, you can see I don't teach meditation, but I teach the breathing practice in which you can take the breath inside your body and then see a cleansing process which happens. That means you are being conscious about your breath. Breath is prana. The prana which is most equal to the chitta vritti. That is why chitta vritti nirodha. How do you control your mind, manage your mind? How do you practice the mind management techniques? That is actually the chitta vritti nirodha. Don't allow the minds to think wild, but be focused through niyama, so that what you can do is ultimately you reach into the stage of dhyana, focus, concentration. You ask anybody, all of them have the problem of unable to concentrate, unable to focus. I'm not able to get into the concept because I'm not able to focus. My attention is less. The attention of attending a lecture is too less. Why does it happen? That happens because your dhyana is not there. Therefore, the layam is not there. You are not able to reach into the focus. So people waste a lot of time. That is because you are not attending. You are only attending for namesake, physically. That is why we have got a great Veda as a lesson. But Upanishad is the end of asking questions and answering. So unless there is a question answer, there is a reflection, there is an inquiry, you don't even write down what you want. So nobody sits with a pen and paper, write it down, understand what is being taught. Also, let me ask my questions. So the Upanishad says always you should have your own reflections. It is not that what DrTPS speaks and what I am telling is important. How do you perceive how do you realize, how do you understand, how do you reflect, how do you consume, and what is that you have consumed is based on your knowledge inside. So it's a comparison, it's a judgment, it's a criticism, it's an interpretation, it's a perceiving what I am saying, not what I am saying exactly. The perceiving what I am saying is what is getting into the receiver's mind. So that perception depends on your background, your knowledge, your attention, your language skill, your interpretation skill. Therefore, what happens? You are not able to get it. You need to discuss. That is how Indian knowledge system believed. That is where the knowledge is not what the master gives to the student. There is nothing which master can give to the student. It is only the reflections which the student make in himself or herself is the knowledge what the student gets. That is because your mind is not a reflection. As I said, Shankara said, Manam Darpana Samanam. The manas have to be like a mirror. But it is not a mirror. It's a concave and convex mirror. Sometimes you glorify things. Sometimes you see only very less. The iota of things are not seen to the perfection in which it is supposed to be seen. Therefore, you lose the holistic approach. The interconnectedness is not understood with the world around me, and the world around you is entirely different. So everybody makes their own wisdom. Ultimately, the knowledge is for giving wisdom. So your wisdom is something different, my wisdom is something different. Energy what happens? Your thought process is different, my thought process is different. That is where everyone has to have their own energy within them, which we can become so happy, we can get enlightened, we can have the chitta vritti nirodha. But it is not practical because your mind is always wandering, because it is not focused. That's what Ramana Maharshi says. There are physical exercises through which probably you can control your mind. That is what the world says. And Ramana Maharshi makes jokes of it. He says, Prana bandhanat liyate mana. Prana bandhanat liyate mana. By prana bandha, by controlling your breathing, pranayama, liyate mana, the mind can be controlled. Liyate, you can dilute it, you can make it peaceful. Jala pakshivat dinarodhanam. It is like putting a bird in a nest. The time you open it, the bird will fly away. That is what, even with all the traditional Indian knowledge system, a great philosophical, psychological, great knowledge which we have. If you look at the happiness index of the world and of India, India stands very bad because we are totally superficial. We are not intensely into the learning process. We are not intensely into the practices. The great techniques of yoga being taught and then internationally being propagated as the source is India. The United Nations also recognizes that India is the source of all this. But when you look at, it's only superficial knowledge. People don't even understand why am I doing it. People don't even think that what is the essence of what I am talking. As per yoga, I'm sure all the people who have got a little bit of Indian knowledge, and all of us are good. I'm sure all the teachers are good in that. Who does a 3 months program on yoga becomes a yoga acharya, and that started talking about yoga. And they all say that acharya is yoga, acharya is Patanjali. I'm sure famous person Patanjali. And the yoga starts with a 4-liner which talks about yogena chittasya Yogena Chittasya. This is my book, Nitya Shloka. Everyday practice of what is to be practiced by the Indian Sanatana Dharma people. And in which A3, I wrote this 24 years back, which I used to teach in my house. All the satsang during Saturdays in my Hyderabad home, this is what I used to do. Yogena Chittasya. Yoga is for the chit, not the physical exercise. So you can see one of my YouTube, which I wrote, yoga is not a monkey's practice. Not standing on the head is not what yoga is. But that is how we now propagate it. Therefore, we diluted the whole essence of yoga. Actually, we are mockerizing, making fun of Patanjali by chanting this and not following it. Because what Patanjali says is yoga is not a physical exercise. It is for the chit. Chit is for the manas, the mind. The English translation is wrong because it is not the direct translation mind. The emotional control is what the purpose of yoga. Yogena Chittasya. The next one is, how do I understand what is in my mind? What I speak is in my mind. DrTPS is talking from the mind, the Atma, and the consciousness and the knowledge which I have got consumed over long years. So how do I put my knowledge? I have to use words. So the Patanjali's next prayer is Padena Vacha. Let all the words comes like a word by word. And then for which I have to be physically fit. Then only I can live. DrTPS never visited a doctor for last 40 years. I am not sick. That is because Malam Sharirasya ja Vaidyakena. I am salute you, Patanjali, who is also a doctor. You tell me where is the Yogasana, Asana is being given in this. No circus is given told here. Yopa Karottam Pravaram Muninam Patanjalim Pratalidatadosmi. So I salute you, oh Patanjali, who are the three components. One is Chit, Yogena Chittasya, Padena Vacha. I must be able to communicate what is in my mind. Therefore, it doesn't come from my buddhi, it doesn't come from my emotions, it comes from my Atma. That is why after speaking, I don't say, oh, I should not have told this. Whether you are there or not, your physical body is there or not, whether you are smiling or not, I will speak what I want because I am not looking at you. Though my eyes are open, I am not seeing. Because I am talking not from my manas, not from my buddhi, it comes from my Atma. I have been tested with the electroencephalograph, EEG, on which to see while lecturing whether my buddhi is working or not. It doesn't work. Because it is not from the buddhi. It just comes, it just flows. So, Yogena Chittasya Patena Vacha Malam Sharirasya ja Vaidyakena. I wrote this long back and different languages. This is in Malayalam, my mother tongue. It is being sold in every small shops. Millions of copies have been distributed free most of the time. We understand the world is not the physical happiness which I gain by having great wishes. It is understanding I have got a noble life which I have to live, in which my intention is to serve the people. Ena kena prakarena yasya kasyabi dehinaha sandosham janayat pratna tadevam ishvara pujanam. That practice is yoga practice. I understand the nature. I join and merge with the world around me so that I don't have a self-entity. I am only a portion of the whole universe as it is. If I can have such a feeling like which people had during the Satya Yuga, then I will not have any problems. My doshas, my vata, pitta, kapha, my diet controlled, because I am not living for the taste which I get for the momentary happiness. I am looking for a long-term happiness like a bliss. If I can have that bliss in my world, and if all of us can have that together, what I do becomes a life, LIFE, live in full enjoyment. And that is what is exactly required. And that is what makes my life happiness. It is not my happiness, it is the happiness around my world along with me. So I am not a island by myself. I am living in a world of the practical life which I am supposed to live. Have to have that sort of a freedom, that sort of a feeling, that sort of a mentality, that sort of a culture, that sort of a practice, that sort of a lifestyle. Otherwise you get a lifestyle mechanism. And people ask me, shall I do yoga practice in Delhi? I said, don't, because when your breathing practice is being happened with a lot of pollution in the world, and you are holding that breath, that is what I don't know how people teach. Generally people teach, hold your breath. So what happens is you are holding the air which is inside your body is totally polluted. So unless your environment is clean, you cannot practice what is being taught at a time, prescribed at a time when the world itself was clean. So your integration of practices must take care of what is around your world. Tomorrow we will talk about what is biorhythm, the physical, emotional, intellectual, social, spiritual. The my fivefold development happens only when we have a call for action which encourages me along with the world around me, because I am not an individual which is not connected to the world. Ishwara sarvabhutanam, each individual inside me also, atmatva sarvabhutanam, inside me also there is a Buddha. The Buddha is that energy. Unless I clean it, I am sure I am not going to get any benefit out of it. So the mind control is not my inner mind control. It is understanding the world around me. Therefore, it's totally a holistic approach. There is no point in saying I am doing a holistic wellness treatment, holistic yoga, holistic thought process. It doesn't happen unless you understand the different aspect which I spoke. I think I spoke more than 35 minutes, 40 minutes. It's good enough. I like to have little bit of reflections from you so that I know what is the direction in which probably I took you, or probably you understood what I am trying to make out, so that if not today, tomorrow I'll be able to make some sense of what I am talking to you. Right? I don't want to continue 1.5 hours of blah 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 lecture, because I am sure I am not talking to people who are not aware of all these sciences. You're all well aware of the science. Maybe I am talking my views on this in a different style. So we could have a dialogue and discussion. Probably you can tell me what